That's very good. Would you like to put the second question up? I think that's answered pretty much the first question, Madeline. Okay. This one is, how often do you use games in your classroom or school? Very good. Okay, that's good also. That's so we had 100% that like games, and then we have probably what I expected, where very few never use them and a few use them very often, and most people are somehow in the middle between occasionally using games and regularly using games in the classroom. Great. I think that's okay. That's exactly what I wanted, to be honest, Malavan. So thank you all for getting the first question right. Very good. Okay, I'm going to begin the presentation now. We're going to move on. So should I just close that window? I'm going to close that. Good. I'm going to share my screen. Start here. I hope that everybody could see this. And I need to do present. A second. There we go. You did the poll, so I should be here now. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody can see that. So this is the title of our discussion today: game-based learning and gamification in the classroom. And as we will find out, they are actually two different things. And we're going to be spending some time on both. I'm going to talk about various different games that I've used in the classroom and how they apply to different subjects and to different age groups. And then I'm going to discuss how gamification works and how that can also be used for a class or a course or even in an entire semester. Now, what I want to do at the beginning is I want us to really understand why we think this is a subject worthy of discussion and why this could work for us in the classroom. And then a little bit about what can we learn from this, from the ideas of self-determination theory and motivation in students. So the first question is a question mark. Why games? Why games in the classroom? And really the simple answer that I could give you, the easiest answer, is that humans love games. And we just did a poll. Do you like games? 100% of people, yes, I like games. And if you want further proof of that, I would ask you to consider that here are games, and sports are just a subsection of games. And football is just a subsection of sports. And if you think about all the energy, and time, and money, and words spent, people talking about football, World Cup, then you'll have an appreciation about how important games are to humans. And the interesting contextual point about this is that actually games themselves are just a subsection of play. Now I get to put my favorite slide, which is a cat playing. We could sit here for 20 minutes watching cats playing, and I'm sure you would all say that was the best webinar you've ever had. Now, the point is that animals play because they are practicing the skills that they're going to need for life. Animals, this cat here is practicing hunting. I don't think he's going to catch that finger, but he's going to keep trying, that's for sure. And I think if you consider that animals, primates, cats, dogs play, and they continue to play throughout their lives, and then you take this idea that we're through play, we are practicing skills we're going to need in our lives, in our adult lives. In a way, you could say that education, one of the definitions of education is practicing the skills that you're going to need. I'm going to take that off because I think people are probably watching that and not listening to me. I think that if you could take that as a definition of education, education is giving children and students skills they're going to need in their life outside education, in their real lives. So in a way, that's a definition of play. And if you take that definition of play, then you'll understand that games can be absolutely central to what we do as teachers, to our practice of the art of teaching. And actually, I think that we don't learn to like games. I think we instinctively like games. As humans, we play them without even thinking about it. We play them because, as I said, they're a form of play. Now, if we dig down a little bit deeper into this, I came across self-determination theory. And the ideas of self-determination theory are focused on motivation. And they take two different kinds of motivation. They say there's a thing called intrinsic motivation and a thing called extrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation is when we are motivated to do something because of the interest and enjoyment in the task itself. So we do it because we enjoy it, because we feel we have purpose doing it. It makes us grow as people. We have curiosity, passion, self-expression. So this is all the things really pretty much that you do, that you want to do. So maybe you'll go to a movie, maybe you'll climb a mountain, maybe you'll go for a walk in the park, maybe you'll read a book, maybe you'll try to learn something because you're curious about it. And I think that as teachers, we'll all agree that the holy grail for us is if we can stimulate curiosity, intellectual curiosity in one of our students, then we feel like we've done a really good job. So that's intrinsic motivation. On the other hand, we have extrinsic motivation, which is the motivation because of the outcome that will result by doing the thing that we are motivated to do. So think about getting paid is the classic extrinsic motivation, but prizes, good grades, putting it into the school context, even fear of punishment or fear of your parents if you don't get good grades. These are all extrinsic motivations. And the research, all the psychological research has shown that intrinsic motivation is much, much stronger than extrinsic motivation. People do things because they want to do them much more readily than they do them because there's a reward at the end of doing that task. Now, obviously, if you look at us, we're all teachers, and you might say to yourself, well, are we motivated intrinsically or extrinsically? Now, actually, this is a little bit simplistic because most people, it's not actually a dualistic thing. There's a spectrum of motivation. So, for example, I really love my job. I really love teaching. I really love my kids. And it's the job that I believe I was born to do. After a long journey through a career in media and film and television, I said I came home to teaching because I like it so much. But at the same time, if they weren't paying me, I probably wouldn't go to school. So there you have a mixture of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And I think most things that you do are somewhere on that line. I think paying my taxes is pure extrinsic motivation. But teaching for me is more intrinsic than extrinsic, but it's definitely a mix of both. Now, what we need to do, or what I believe helps us to do as teachers, is to try to move our kids or our students from extrinsic to an intrinsic motivation. Now, let's look at that a little bit further. By the way, if anybody's got a question, I see that chat is buzzing, and I don't think I'm able to open chat and do this. Let me see if I can do that. Are there questions coming in chat? Sorry, just
no questions. I think some of them were unable to unmute their mic. Sorry, John, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Guys, can you check if you can unmute your mic, because you should be able to do it by yourself. Okay, thank you. Someone's good.
Great.
Okay, chat. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So we were talking about the continuum of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And what we've done is we've drilled down a little bit into intrinsic motivation. Now, this is all very theoretical, and theories of human behavior to me are, actually human behavior about human behavior, because we are talking about how we behave, and that itself is a behavior. My point is, I think they're useful if they give you concrete information, if they provide tools for you to evaluate your practice and to make it better. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I call this is kind of a rubric for me for how I practice teaching, especially for games, but also for other ways of presenting materials, such as project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. So the elements of intrinsic motivation, and I'm going to give you them as they are referred to in games, because games designers understand this theory extremely well. And this is something that all game designers, this is one of the first things they talk about when they're mapping out a possible game. So the first thing is autonomy. And autonomy is another word for choice. So In a game situation, that means, first of all, you choose to play the game. You pick up the game, you put it in your console, or you open the box and you take out the board. And then the second choice you make is you keep playing the game. So next we have mastery or competence. And the idea here is that you get better at the game through playing it. Now, we've all had this experience. Someone's teaching you a game. It could be a game of cards or a board game. And at first, you spend a lot of time thinking about the rules. You're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do these pieces move? How does that? You think about chess. At first, you learn the moves of all the pieces. And then you get better because you start to understand the rules and see the implications of the rules of the game. And eventually, you start to think strategically. And you start planning out ways in which you can apply the rules to enable you to win the game. And that's very, very important. Now, the third one is called purpose and relatedness. So either you find meaning in the game that's important to you, that connects to you in your life, or, and this is very, very important, you relate socially through the game. Most games, particularly not video games, you play with other people. So it's a social activity. A lot of video games, and I wouldn't say most, but at least half, you play with other people. Even if you don't play with other people, you can become a part of a community of players, or you can discuss the game with other players. So this is a very, very important social point. So we have these three things here. We have autonomy, mastery and competence, and relatedness. And what I find it useful is to think about almost all of my activities in the classroom, game-based or not. I always think about it in terms of these, because then it gives me an idea of, well, will the kids be intrinsically motivated to do it or not? Now, this right up to now, I've just been really repeating a theory from some other people. I've not added anything original, but I would add this. I would add the importance of narrative, the story. I did 20 years working in media. I worked in film, I worked in advertising, I worked in game design, and all my work was as a storyteller. I worked as a writer, I worked as an editor. And for me, one of the best things about coming back to teaching was that I brought this understanding of story with me. And I apply this also all the time throughout my classes. I think a good story can make a bad game good, and a bad story can make a good game bad. So again, I keep this in mind all the time when I'm thinking about my games. Just gonna have a sip of tea, sorry. Now, let's see, let's move on. And what I'd like to do is start applying some of my ideas and to classroom activity. Sorry, I just actually know, do you know what? I'd like to take a step back here. And I'd like everybody to take a second to think about these things in relation to school and education. Of course, mastery and competence, that's the idea behind school. You start learning something, you get better at it. There is a social element to school, definitely. Is that something that occurs in the classroom? I'm not sure. I think this first one is very interesting, choice, because I think in most traditional, let's say, educational systems, the students have no choice. They are told what time to go to school. Now you're going to be learning this. Open your books to page 50. Now do this exercise. And I think this is part of the great resentment students feel about going to school. They have no choice in the matter. Okay, now moving on. The first point I'd like to make is this. If it has rules, you can turn it into a game. Now, this, for me, okay, we've got science covered now because it's got rules, but not only science, because many subjects have different kinds of rules in them. English language, arts, there are certain rules concerning grammar. There are certain rules concerning how you compose a letter, for example. Economics, business studies. Most of these subjects have some kind of rules, and it's very, very easy to take rules and turn them into a game. And in fact, there are a lot of educational games out there that do just that. I'm just going to start with one now. So this is, I use a platform called Cognity. And Cognity is a digital textbook. So we don't have paper textbooks, we have digital textbooks. And it's nice because instead of just open your books, they have videos embedded and games and interactive simulations. And so this I find a much better way than, I've got someone in chat saying they would like to share their experience for economics. So,
John, we are unable to see the video.
I haven't put it on yet, that's fine.
Oh, okay, brilliant, thanks.
Yeah. So here's the rule. moment is forced to, this is about balancing things. And if you put something on one end of a balance and on the other end of a balance, how do you find out whether the balance will balance? How do you calculate the force on the balance? And it's called the turning moment. And that moment is the force of the object times the perpendicular distance to the pivot. Now, a lot of people go, what is John talking about right now? So I'm going to show you a little game. I'm going to have to get out of this. And let's see, is it this one? This one. Is this one, I think? Yes, it's this one. Come on, internet, don't let me down. Yes, so now what happens here is the students have, yeah, here we go. So you have, everybody can see this, all right? Okay, this is not the game. So here's the game. Level.
Can everyone see? Sorry.
Yes.
Just give a thumbs up. Okay, or unmute your mic.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
John, they are all alive. John,
right,
they're all alive.
Right. That's very good to hear. So here the task is you have to balance this using the formula I've just given you. So actually this is 5 kilograms. So I should put this one at an equal distance from the pivot, which is at the center there. Okay, now check that. Great, very good. So this is a very, very simple game. And there's another one. What will happen here? Well, we've got 20 kilos there and 15 kilos there. And so I should count they're at the same distance. So presumably it will go like that. Let's see. Good. Okay. Now what's interesting about this is there are actually 2 ways to play this game. And I've played it both ways because I'm lucky enough to have 2 classes of IGCSE. And actually, I just started this year teaching IGCSE. Before that, I was teaching kids in middle school. And so actually, I've kind of gone back a little bit because I've reverted to teaching a bit more traditionally because I'm just doing it for the first time. But what I did figure out was that there are 2 ways to play this game. And the first time I played it the first way. And I said, this is the formula. And I explained the formula. And I gave them some examples on the board. And then I said, okay, go play the game. And they did that. And they were quite happy to do it because it's quite an okay game. But in the second class, it occurred to me I should do something differently. And instead of telling them the formula, I said, go play the game and figure out the formula. And this was much more engaging for them because, okay, they had to, instead of me giving them the knowledge came from them. They played the game. And of course, like everybody, what you do at first is you just move things around, you experiment, you balance things around. And I put them in pairs and said, you're not allowed to communicate with other pairs. And then when you've got the formula, you come and tell me. And so they did that. They played around. And after a while, they started trying to formalize their experience of experimenting with these balances. And that to me was a very, very powerful lesson because they remembered that. Because it wasn't just one of a list of formulas I'm giving them, it was one that they came up with. So this shows you that there are many ways to play even a simple game like this. Now I want to show you another one. Because, actually, I'm going to skip this one because it kind of makes the same point. But this is a very good one also. Now, I'm pretty sure that I may be the oldest person in the room. I don't know. But this is a game called Lunar Lander. And this game came out in video arcades in around 1981. And it was a really, really good game. What you have to do is you have to land this little capsule onto the moon's surface. I remember seeing this game when I was a kid and just going, well, that's really, really hard. It's a very, very difficult game. And watching a kid playing it and thinking, oh, that kid is so cool because he can play this game. And I love that I've come full circle now, 40 odd years later, and I'm using this game as an example for Newton's laws. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the version that PHET has, which is much easier. Okay, let's turn off the sound. So what do you have to do in this game? Well, what you have to do is you have to land, as I said, the lunar lander on the surface. But what's beautiful about this game is that all of Newton's laws are in this game. Every single one. You have the law of universal gravitation because you're being pulled to the moon's surface. You have inertia, you have force equals mass times acceleration, and you have every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so you start this game, and there we go. And look, there's gravity at work. And now I'm going to use the third law to slow myself down. Now I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to go over there. Well, I'm going to go get some high speed over there. But I stopped thrusting, but I'm still moving. And that's because of the first law. So you can even put the vectors here, which is quite nice. And you can see where you're going. I don't think I'm going to survive that. No, oh dear. I just killed my astronauts. So you can give this game to kids to play, and they can be as young. I've played this with kids as young as 8 or 9 years old, and they all really like it. And then you can get them thinking about what's happening here. Why when you turn off the thrust, does the shit not stop? And they can talk about inertia, and then you can relate it to things that they see in their daily life. I've also played it with kids of 15, 16, and asked them to make calculations based on this game, which they have done quite happily, because they're playing the game and they love the game. So there you go. There's Newton in one game. Now then, oh no, wait, wrong button. Sorry. Present. That's the button. So far, nobody's asked me any questions. That's okay, but let's keep moving on. We do have a lot of material. Yes.
John, we do have some comments. I think some of the teachers are already using some tools available and they'd like to share.
Yes,
please feel free to unmute your mic and share.
FET has some really, really, really good simulations.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm Kalgi from Dubai.
Okay, hello.
I'm an economics educator and have been using these games from last 5 to 6 years and have seen a lot of improvement in these students' outcomes. So specifically for my subject, which is economics, it's a subject I know most of you know that most of it is theory. So to make it interesting, if games are used in the classroom, for example, if I'm teaching Monopoly or if I'm teaching oligopoly or topics related to demand, supply, then a lot of games are available and the site that I use is Tutor to You. So I just love that site and it has a lot of resources which are available for teachers to use in their classrooms. And for different subjects, they do have different games. So as you mentioned, like board games can be used or simulations can be used. So that is being done in economics as well. And the outcome is really good. So I do love this approach of gamification in the online learning platform. So that's what I just wanted to share.
Thank you very much. And it's really interesting because, you know, my subjects, I've been teaching English language arts and now I'm teaching science, which is quite a strange journey. But I was trying to think of things, other subjects where I could think of games, and economics was one of the first I thought, and I thought that supply and demand, you could do some really fun things with that. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Even one of the strategies that I love is like you give some article that could be used in English as well, or any other theory subject for that matter. Like you give an article where say some wrong concepts are say given, or say some words have been swapped with the wrong word, and ask the student to rectify it or correct it as per their understanding. So that is also an interesting way to make them learn the right thing by giving them something which was say either swapped or which was not correct. So or words which have been replaced by some funny words. So they just have to find out the correct keyword. So there are lots and lots of games, lots of tools that are available. And
very good.
Indeed, it helps. Yes.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm going to just keep moving on, and if people have comments, please feel free to or questions, please feel free. Sorry. To jump in and stop me. I'm very happy to answer your questions.
John, have a question.
Yes.
There's one from Risha. Which games have you used for teaching English, especially academic writing?
Especially which? Sorry, the last one?
Academic writing.
Especially academic. Wow, I've used so many games in English. It's too many to list, really. Academic English. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, and I'm going to get to this when we get to the assessment part of the discussion, and you'll see there that actually There's a lot of quiz show formats that I find very interesting, because in a way a test is just a quiz, and you see how the kids love Kahoot so much because it's putting a quiz in, it's putting a test in a new environment. But all the ELA, sorry, it's English language arts. English language arts was a question there. If you look at quizzes like Family Fortune is a good example, and I don't know what it's called in your country, but it has a different name in every country. In England, it's called in the US, it's Family Feud, and it's the one where you have two families and they've got to guess 5 things. And all those kind of games, you can take, for example, we could take metaphor, simile, analogy, and we could play with those and put them in a quiz show format. That would be my initial response, because I've used those a lot. And then, of course, when we get to gamification, you'll see how I applied it in gamification as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bear that question in mind, and I'm going to come back to it when we get a bit later in the presentation, if that's okay. Good. Thank you. Share screen. Let's go back to that. Okay. So I'm going to quickly, because we're not doing great on time, I'm going to show you a game that I invented. So here, the specific learning outcomes are whatever you're studying, for example, charge on atoms or the turning moment on Newton's laws. And what it brings in is, as well as the specific academic achievement you get from this, is you get collaboration and you get the simulated experience of the phenomena, which is very important. I've also done, I've been lucky enough to work on Romania's first science museum, which is going to be open in about 3 years. And I traveled a lot around science museums and science centers in Europe. And there's this idea that the purpose of a science center is, it's the idea that the people experience the phenomena. And this is very important to me in science. And I think that in a case where now we are in lockdown, I need to find ways for the students to experience phenomena at home. So this is what really helps me. I'm going to go very fast through this because it's quite a long discussion, and I don't think we've quite got time to cover it all. So here I'm teaching about electrons and where they go in an atom, and I'm teaching about how atoms bond together to form molecules and compounds. If you notice here, there's a deliberate mistake. I wrote 2 elections, not 2 electrons. So let's please God not have another election. I think we've all had enough of that. Right, in the case here, we have 2 electrons fill a shell, and then you put another electron in the next shell. And I taught this to the kids, and I taught them how they bond together, and they weren't getting it, and I couldn't understand it. And when the student that is actually probably the best student in the class said to me, I don't understand any of this, I knew I had a problem. And I realized that the reason they didn't understand it was they were getting hung up on the theory. They were thinking about the theory, like, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Now, the reason this happens is very complicated, and I'm not sure I can explain it, but it's to do with quantum mechanics. And we don't cover quantum mechanics in IGCSE. So actually, they don't really need to know why it happens. What they need to know is it happens like this. These are the rules. This is how you do, this is how you fill up electrons in an atom, and this is how they get together to form molecules. So I said, okay, I'm going to take this completely out of the context of electrons and protons and neutrons and atoms. I'm going to put it in a new context. I'm going to give them all some money. And I'm going to say, look, you have 3 bags, and the first bag holds 200 euros, and the second bag holds 800 euros, and the third bag holds 800 euros. And you have to put the money in the bags 1, 2, 3, like that. And this is round 1. So I go, okay, student A, you have 100 euros, student B, 400, so on and so forth. So how do you put the money in the bag? And at the end of round 1, they say, okay, student A says, well, I put 100 in the first bag. And student E says, I put 200 in the first bag and 800 in the second bag and 200 in the third bag. And I say, very good, you've all got the answer correct. I'm going to reward you with another 500 euros. Great, oh, okay, very happy. Now, this is what I call a very quick and dirty game that I just invented literally 2 weeks ago. And I think I develop it by playing with the story. For the story for this one, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to give you, I've just sold my car so I can give you the money at the end of this game. And I'm mortgaging my house, and I'm trying to make it a bit more personal. Now, here we have bonding. So in bonding, these atoms share electrons in order to get a stable outer shell. I'm not going to try to explain this to you because it would take too long, but putting that in the context, the students have an amount of money, and I told them they must finish the round with a full bag. How they can finish the round is by sharing units of 100 euros with other players. And then I'll count those euros for both players. So now I go, okay, here, you've all got your money here. And then I leave and say, you've got to figure it out. So actually they start talking to each other and like, how much money have you got? Okay, can I share 100 with you? And eventually they should come to the point where A and C are sharing 100 with B, and D and E are sharing 200 with each other. And that gives you a molecule of water and a molecule of oxygen. And we played several rounds of this, getting more and more complicated. And actually, I saw that they were inventing, they were actually doing molecules that I didn't even know that they were supposed to do in the game, because we have quite a lot of students in here. And we do the same thing for ionic bonding, where in ionic bonding, you give away an electron to another atom. So here you go. Here you must finish with a full or empty bag. And certain people, I called them heavy metal fans, to get the idea that this is how metals bond. And I said that makes them extremely generous, and they just want to give away to other players. So here in the example here, A gives 100 to B, and C and D each give 100 to E. And then you have these compounds, lithium fluoride and sodium oxide. So that's just a really simple, it's a very, very simple game. And it's just actually, you're just taking the context of a teacher writing on the board and saying, okay, this is how it works, and changing it into them collaborating with each other to figure out how they would share money to fool me, really, or to cheat the taxman, or to escape the bank, or however you want to do it. And then as soon as you apply it back to the atoms, they get a bit confused again, and they say, oh, okay, I don't really know how this one goes with that one. You say, oh, what would you do if you had bags of money and you were sharing? Oh yeah, okay, I get it. So it's kind of an aid to them solving these rules. Okay, these are all pretty simple games that I've gone through now. And now I want to turn to something. Now I wonder if I could do a quick poll, but I guess we can't. I wonder how many of you have heard of the game of Among Us. So I'm going to stop the share for a second and just look at you, because this game, could you just raise your hand if you've heard the kids or students talking about this game? Anybody? No?
Hello, sir. Can I share my own experience using this game?
Yes, please do. I would love to hear that. Yes.
I actually used this game in my... Oh, by the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Evan. I'm from Malaysia. So I teach English. I used this game a few days ago in my listening speaking class. So okay. Yeah, so the learning outcome of this lesson is to, for students to be able to speak up, persuade, like those interactions. So it kind of, they enjoyed it to the point that, fighting and stuff over there. But of course, they know it's a game and stuff. So I personally feel that using games as a learning tool is incredible. It's really incredible, especially when it comes to getting attention. You can really see like students can really go all out when to achieve that outcome. So yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, I'm not surprised that you use this game, because right now this is the most popular game on the planet. And if you are aged between about 9 and 19, then you're spending a large proportion of your time talking about this game, watching videos about this game, or playing this game. Now, I came to it through my students, because we had they came back to school at the beginning of the year and they were very excited. And then 2 weeks later, the schools closed again. And the first class I had with them after that, they were so depressed and they were so upset and unhappy. And I looked at their faces and I said, guys, what do you want to do in this class online? And they were all, and one of them said, could we play Among Us? And I said, well, I don't know what it is, but let's have a go. Let's see what it is. And it is a brilliant game, an absolutely brilliant game. We had a really fun hour playing this game together. And then I got to thinking, because you see, if you apply Maslow's law, and the law is, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm a teacher, so everything looks like a lesson. So I started thinking more and more about this game, and I played it with some other students. And here's another principle: if it's a game, it can be a lesson. So I want to show you, just quickly explain what this game is. So you are 10 people, you're on a spaceship, and 1 or 2 of the people on the spaceship are imposters, and they want to sabotage the spaceship or kill the other people in the spaceship. So everybody walks around the spaceship doing different tasks, and the imposters are trying to kill or sabotage the people. And at the end of the game, if what happens is, okay, so if you see a dead body, someone's been killed, you report it, and then everybody goes into a meeting and you discuss who is the imposter. And everybody says, oh, you know, it's that guy. Oh, I was doing this and I was doing the other. And then you eventually eject someone into space. In this case, they injected the wrong person into space because Cuban Rocks was not imposter. And so it's actually a pretty simple game, and it's a version of several games that a card game called Mafia, and it's not a completely original game, but it's done so nice and done so well that the kids really love it, and teenagers really love it. And so I got to thinking that there's a lot going on here in this game. And as the previous speaker said, if you go to this part, there's a lot of language going on there: persuasion, discussion, accusation, defending yourself. So for an English language teacher, this is a great gift, especially if your kids don't like speaking, because all you've got to say is, let's play the game, only speak English. That's it. So, but there's a lot more going on there as well. And I tried to, after playing this game with, you know, kids aged 17 and kids aged 10, I'm like, okay, I can definitely find some material here. So I looked at a lot of different ways of doing this. And let's have a look. First of all, the easy one is probability, because you're 10 people in a room and 2 of you are imposters. So what's the probability of you ejecting someone of that being an imposter? Well, that's 1 in 5. Then someone dies, so then it's 2 in 9. And then you start thinking about the different probabilities. And the kids, the students like it because it's making them better at the game, which they spend their free time doing. And then we started thinking about process. So let's take society. If we take this as a metaphor for society, and most people are crewmates. They just want to have a decent life and get on with their things and do their tasks and be happy. But there's some imposters in society who want to go against that and try to sabotage society. So how do we deal with that? Well, we deal with that through the law and through process. So we started talking about these meetings, and usually it was a chaos of everybody shouting at everybody, and hey, it was that guy, I saw him. No, it wasn't me. Okay, we said, let's try to develop, student-led, a process for this part of the game. So then eventually we had something resembling a court of law where the kids had order in which they could speak, and then how do you accuse somebody and how do you defend yourself? And they found that also great. I'm playing the game better. We're getting better at the game. And then also we have, and this is the really interesting thing for me because I'm teaching science now. I asked them to design some experiments to make the game, to make it easier for the crewmates, because the crewmates usually lose. And so typically what they do in this game is they just run around in different places, a bit like one of those bad horror movies where everybody should stay together, but they don't stay together. So we brainstormed some ways that they could play the game better, and we set up a controlled game, and we set up a test game, and we mapped out the results. If they go around in pairs, it's easier. If they go around in threes, and we spent at least 3 classes doing that. And really what they're learning there is, how do you do an experiment? What is the scientific method? And what can I learn by conducting controlled experiments? Which is something very central to what I'm teaching in science. And they do it by playing the game that they love so much. So I think there are many, many examples of games that can be applied like this. And again, in the discussion, I could list more, but I'm going to move on because now I'm going to get to something more complicated. And that's the idea that if it has a story, it can be turned into a game. Now we cover the rest of all our subjects. And I want to show you this example. This is called the Easter Island game. I'm sure that everybody's heard of Easter Island or they've seen pictures of these statues. Now, my course here was on environmental degradation, on deforestation, on human impact on the environment. What I chose to do was use Easter Island as a metaphor or as a small test case for what can happen with environmental degradation. So I introduced the kids to the idea of this being the most remote place on Earth. And then you can see when they arrived to this place, the Dutch discovered it on Easter Day, rediscovered it because there were people living there. And they saw these statues, but what they saw also was a pretty wasted landscape with very few people living there. Yes, Malawan?
Yes, I think we are unable to see the screen.
You can't see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, let me share again.
John, I think
just a second.
I think people would like to share share their experiences as well.
Okay. Do you see the screen now?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
When did you stop seeing it? Okay. Okay, so this is Easter Island. These are the statues of Easter Island. And this is Easter Island, the most remote place on Earth. And this is what they found when it was rediscovered in the 17th century. And the island there were no trees. There were no land animals bigger than an insect. All the people had were chickens and rats to eat. And they couldn't go fishing because there were no trees. But how? The question is, how did they make these statues? Now, initially, I put this as a PBL class, and the kids would then go and research what happened on Easter Island. And if you see, the answer is that they cut down all the trees over the course of the time there. And there's a big history for that. And they cut down all the trees to use for firewood and building and canoes, and also to build all these statues, which they were raising to say, dear gods, please make our environment better. So the irony is that by making the statues, they made their environment worse. Now, this class was quite interesting, but I felt that I said to the kids, you know, okay, so they cut down all the trees. What do you think about that? And they go, oh, they were stupid. Oh, okay. It didn't stick with them like I wanted it to. And this is, okay, I'm going to skip that over. So what I thought, there's a thing that I call visceral learning. And it's when you have an emotional, it's like an experience. You know, we know that kids learn through experience and people learn through experience. But then if it's an emotional experience, if you can connect emotionally to it, that learning is much more powerful. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to play a game. I'm going to try to get them to feel what the people on the island would have felt when they were cutting down the last tree. And so I started out with a text-based game where they had an option. So your people are hungry, choose an option. And they would choose A, B, or C. And then they would have another choice. And they would keep moving through this game. And then eventually they would be in the same position. They've cut down all the trees. They've destroyed their environment. And then they would have this connection to that. But the problem was the kids hated the game. And I said, well, okay, I don't understand this. I was really confident about this. But then I realized it's because they actually don't have autonomy. I've rigged the game. I've made it so they cannot escape the fate of the Easter Islanders. They have to do what I've programmed them to do. And that's why they hate the game. So I said, okay, I'm going to try again. So what I did was I took a map of Easter Island, I put the squares on it, and I divided it into 4 like this. And I said, right, guys, you are all arriving on Easter Island. You're in your canoes and there's a big storm and everybody arrives at a different part of the island. And I mapped out resources on the island so that different parts of the island had more trees and other parts had more flints and other parts had more water, and there was wild food and they could make food. And I put one person in each team. They're all divided into teams to be the chieftain who was responsible for, you know, leading their people. And then I made one person a priest, or they got to choose the priest. And the priest was the only one that could talk to me. And I would give them instructions, but in very, very cryptic ways. Like, you dream, you see a snake eating a fruit, and that would be my instructions to them on the game. And what happened then was, right, guys, each turn is 30 years. You give me your instructions and let's see what happens. And this was much more interesting because they felt they had a chance to avoid the fate of the Easter Islanders. And in fact, I played this game 8 times, and in 2 times they did. They actually created a mini paradise on Earth, and they were all happy and all prosperous and all doing well. And this too is a lesson. This too is a lesson because it shows you that things aren't preordained and that things don't have to turn out the way that you think they might. But this is something really interesting. And it actually, what it is, it's about surrendering control as a teacher and giving the control to the kids. And I'm going to get a bit more into this in a minute. But what I really enjoyed was the way that they, first of all, they have complete autonomy in this game. Second of all, they can get better and figure things out in this game by making suggestions, by having ideas. Maybe we should set up a central trading post. That's what they did in one game. So everybody could go to the center and trade their goods with each other without having an argument. So they have mastery and competence. Obviously, they're all playing the game together, and they feel that it has meaning because it's about surviving on this island. So it was a really, really good game and a great story. Now, what did we learn from that? Well, they had this deep, visceral feel and understanding of how environmental degradation works. They knew the effects of deforestation, which changes the climate, which makes the soil easier to erode, which means loss of biodiversity. And they had all these things that they were doing: research, critical, analytical, strategic thinking, doing this all while playing the game. So now, these are some more examples of story-based games, and I don't think we have time to talk about them right now, but maybe it could come up in a future discussion. So role-playing games are good. The Easter Island game is what I'd call a resource management game. And you see these quite a lot on the internet, where you have to, get resources to build things, and then you can do further things. So now I want to talk about, this is the last game I'm going to talk about. And this is called the World Peace Game. And this game is, I'm going to show you the board. This is the board of the World Peace Game. When I saw this board for the first time online, I said, I have to play this game. I have to figure out how this game is played. And essentially, it's this board is about 2 meters high, and it's got 4 levels. And on the bottom level is underneath the sea. The second level is land and sea. And then you have the air and space. And there are about 1,400 pieces on this board. And it's 4 countries who, at the beginning of the game, are locked into a series of, the world is a mess. The world is a mess. There are problems with the environment. There are problems with refugees. There are problems with resource shortages. There are problems with war and peace and land disputes and space disputes. And the kids, the students, they inherit this mess, just as they will inherit the mess of the world today when they grow up. And their task in this game is they've got to solve all these problems, and they've got to finish the game together with everybody at peace and everybody slightly richer than they were at the start of the game. Now, this is a very intense experience. This is 4 hours per day for 5 days. So that's 5 days, 4 hours per day. And it's an immense amount for the kids to absorb. Now, the key or the secret to the game is you as the teacher completely relinquishing control to the students. And you say to them, it's your job to figure it out. I do not make any suggestions. I do not give you any help. I don't help you in any single way. You have to figure it out. And what I'm here to do is to facilitate and to explain how the game is played and how the process of the game it works. So you have 4 countries. Each country has a prime minister, a defense minister, a foreign minister, and so on. You have institutions like the United Nations and the World Bank, and you've got to work together, and you just show them the process by which they can work together. There's one student is chosen as it's called the weather god in this game, and really it's like physics for the game. So if the kid says, well, can I send a rocket to space with refugees in it? And they ask you, and you say, well, don't ask me, ask the weather god, because that's the person that tells you. So it's not, I'm not even helping them like that. Now there's a mantra that you use, and you can see the kids playing the game. This is the World Peace Game mantra. So they come to you and they say, can I invade the yellow country? And you just say, well, it's up to you. But ask yourself these 3 questions. Does it make sense? Can you afford it? And what are the consequences? So this is the World Peace Game. Now, honestly, I can say that this is the most incredible educational experience of my life. I played this game 4 times, and I would play it. In fact, if it hadn't been for lockdown, I was planning to do this year. So thank you, COVID, for ruining that along with everything else. Now, what's so fascinating about this game is that the students become so absorbed by it and become so committed to figuring out, and you don't give them any concessions of language. You don't say, I'm going to use words you understand. No, you use words that we use in diplomacy, in economics, in politics, and they have to figure it out. And you throw it all on them. And at the beginning, their backs are bent, but at some point, there's a breakthrough in the game, and you see that they think that they're going to figure it out. And suddenly they stand up straighter and they get more enthusiastic. But this is a 5-day journey, and it's about overloading them with difficult tasks and then letting them pick themselves up and figure it out, but not by giving them help, not by doing it for them. And the guy that invented this game is an American teacher called John Hunter. And I will share the link of his TED Talk, because I would never recommend a TED Talk except this one. This is the most incredible TED Talk. And he is the most wonderful man, an amazing teacher. And he said to me once, you know, there's no limit to the creativity of a child if you give them a white piece of paper and do not tell them what to draw on it. And this is the philosophy of the World Peace Game. They have to figure it out. And guess what? In 5 games, we've solved global warming, all the refugee crises, we've made peace, and we've solved all the world's problems 5 times. Actually, there's an interesting point in the TED Talk, is when the Pentagon asked him to come into the Pentagon, they wanted to see how this simulation would work. So it was it's pretty nice. Okay, I think we've only got about 5 minutes left, 5-10 minutes, correct, Marlon?
Yes,
yes, what's the time left now? Because I wanted to talk about gamification. So that I'm going to try to, I'll take about 5-6 minutes.
Unless you want to extend by another 30 minutes.
I can extend by another 10-15 minutes. How's that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
It's always good
Okay.
for me.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We have a hand raised. Yes.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Ahmad from Dubai, an English teacher actually. Thank you very much for sharing these great examples for gamification. However, I just have, like, let me say, kind of misconception between interactive assessment tools, like the great examples the attendees here you've mentioned, like Kahoot, quizzes, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the difference between these kind of tools and the gamification as a concept? You know,
Yes.
we are getting smarter educators, I mean. They know the difference between gamification and just kind of playing a quick interactive game. I wouldn't say gamification as a concept, to get assessment data from them, whether it's kind of formative assessment or any kind of assessment, and that they are playing actually, and we are extracting some you know, data from them or information regarding their education. So what is the difference between gamification and just, you know, interactive tools?
This was such a good question. This was such a good question, because actually the next slide is this one. So look how well you anticipated what I was about to say. There is a difference between games-based learning, where you use games as part of the learning process and you use it as part of your classroom practice, and gamification is where you turn the whole of the learning process into a game.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So you take either a class or a course or a curricula or a semester, and then everything becomes a game. Everything is part of the game. Even doing an assessment is part of the game, or even reading a page in your textbook is part of the game. And
sorry, if you let me to interrupt here, that takes me to the second part of the question. When we talk about like standard-based learning, like, you know, the CCSS or even the RGCSE, like, how can we integrate this and make this, you know, as a whole semester plan or curriculum plan, instead of just following the standards that you are supposed to teach, you know, in the more, you know, orthodoxies of education. You have to finish this with the time limit that we have within a curriculum. Sorry for interruption again.
No problem. It's a very good question, because this is the question that I was hoping to answer now. So honestly, everybody, that was not a plant, that question. I didn't know it was coming right there. It's such a perfect lead into what I want to say next. It's a really, really good question. So let me just address it like this. What are the elements of gamification? The elements of gamification are very simple. So you have a character, which is the student, and the student creates a character, and that character does quests or missions. What we would call that in teacher talk is schoolwork. And by doing these quests or missions, they gain experience points, and the experience points allow them to increase their level in the game, which unlocks new abilities for them to have in the game and unlocks new quests and missions. You also have things called badges or awards, which you can use for how they're performing in the quests or missions, but also for how they're performing in a wider sense in the class. Now, a lot of gamification that exists right now is focused on behavior management. I can give you one example from a gamified course I did. Something that always bothered me was that when I would walk into my classroom, everybody would be, nobody would have their books open. Some kids would be talking by the corner. One was throwing paper at the other. And I'd say, guys, come on, you know, I'm in the classroom now, sit down, open your books. It would take 5 minutes to get them all settled and sat down with their books open. So when I gamified the course and we started playing and they really liked the idea, I said, okay, I'm going to quietly announce that I'm going to have a badge called Ready to Go. And anybody that is ready to go when I walk in the classroom is going to get 10 points in the game. Didn't make a big fuss about it. Walk into the class the next time, 2 kids are sitting with their books open, ready to go. And I say, oh, 10 points to you, 10 points to you. And the other kids go, whoa, wait, why is he getting 10 points? Okay, because I told you, this ready to go thing. Okay, next class, 90% of the kids are sitting with their books open and their pens there. Next class after that, okay, there's always one, but that one is not always the same one. So it's just a huge improvement, and you can gain that through positive reinforcement. And all those years of me, you know, tearing my hair out, which is why I have no hair, and saying, why aren't you ready to go? And I did it through something as simple as this. So how does it work? Now, first of all, actually, well, why do it well? Now, again, if we look at our intrinsic motivation elements, the motivation in the classroom was way, way up. The academic response was very good, and I can talk about that afterwards. Now, if they're playing the game and doing the quests that they should be doing, the work is laid out for them, and they can choose their own journey through how they need to do the work. So at no time am I saying, right, today we're going to do this. No, they sit down and they look at the game and they say, where am I on my journey? What can I do next? What choices of tasks do I have to do next? So they choose. And then actually, if they have a problem or if they don't understand, they come to you and say, I don't understand this. So I can spend time with the kids or the students that are having problems understanding, while the ones that understand it can continue with their work. So they always have something to do. You never have that problem of, you know, somebody, I've finished, what do I do now? Or I haven't finished and I'm holding up the class, because everybody's working at their own pace and I'm there to support them doing it. As I mentioned, the behavior management is very positive. And there were several things that I used, even though that wasn't the focus of my gamified course. And it's in a gamified course, you can put in elements of other best practice of teaching. And I personally, I really like PBL and I like inquiry-based learning. So I put a lot of that as quests or missions in my gamified course. Now, if we look at something, I'm going to just skip back to this, because this really speaks to the question that the last person had. How do you do it? Now, here I am, I'm starting to teach IGCSE combined sciences. I'm going to pick biology as an example. And a traditional way is you follow a scheme of work. And so here you see a scheme of work for biology. You start with life characteristics and cells and molecules, and you do, you know, respiration, and you do digestion and reproduction, you get inheritance, ecology. It makes sense, that line, somehow. It starts small and get big. And you can say, okay, I'm going to gamify this. I'm going to call life level 1 and cells level 2. And when you get to the end of the scheme of work, you've won the game. But that, I'm sorry, is a very boring game, because it doesn't have the elements of intrinsic motivation. There's no autonomy for the students in that game. Yeah, you could add some by making some little side quests. But if I show you the English course that I did gamify, the map of how that course worked actually looks like this. So, not a linear scheme of work. And so we were divided into criticism, composition, debate, projects, and what I called fun, which again was kind of an internal game reward to help the students to navigate the map and to act as a kind of incentive for them to do certain tasks that maybe they didn't want to do. And so they actually choose how they move through this course, and that gave them autonomy. And they could choose, they didn't have to do all of it to complete the course, but there were certain things that were compulsory, and there were...
Let me go to work. What's wrong? What's wrong?
Hello? Sorry, and there were certain things that were compulsory and certain things that they could do whether they wanted to or not. And of course, well, okay, this is how you do it. So if I'm going to go back to this, let me just go back to this scheme of work. And I started thinking, right, how would I do this? How would I do a biology IGCSE, or the part of combined science that is IGCSE? How would I map that out? And actually, I'm just going to do this quickly on the whiteboard, because I'm going to show you what my thoughts were about that. Now, if you see, okay, let's start drawing. So I was sitting thinking about it here, and if you can see behind me, I've got the park. I was thinking, well, how would you do something like that? And at that exact moment, what floated by my window was a leaf, an autumn leaf. And I thought, okay, well, actually, if you think about biology, of all the sciences, it's the most interconnected, because life isn't like a scheme of work. Life is like webs of relationships and flows of energy and flows of processes that make everything interconnected. So if I was to say, all right, let's start with the story of a leaf, then, and you can see that I could go, oh, there's quite a lot there. We can talk about the structure of the leaf. And that could lead us to the function of the leaf, which is photosynthesis. And this is about cells. And this is about photosynthesis. And this is about, also, you could go to the biochemistry of a leaf. And of course, a leaf is connected to a tree. And so you can talk about the tree. And when the tree dies, it becomes connected to a mushroom. And so you could say, right, well, here's the story of a mushroom. And this is the way in which I would try to build up a game map, if you like, for IGCSE biology. And I would say, right, I'm going to try and find connections. And I'm trying to find a journey that the students can take through the game. And that journey should have autonomy. And they should, you know, biochemistry, once you've unlocked that, you can unlock respiration. And once you've unlocked respiration, you can unlock the journey of, I don't know, the story of a honey badger. I like honey badgers, that's a good animal. So as you can see, we're moving through, we've got story here, we've got autonomy here, we've got mastery, we've got competence, we've got relatedness, because a lot of these things could be done as project-based learning, or they can be done as collaborative tasks. And that is how I would and will probably next year do that. Because here's the thing, there are some, the issue is with this, is this a lot of work? I mean, it's a lot, because you have to plan and create the content before the game. So you have to do all your planning before they play the game. After that, it's quite nice, but you have to create good content, because the game is only as good as its content. And this speaks exactly to what the last speaker is saying. Off-the-shelf solutions don't really exist right now. You cannot buy a gamified IGCSE biology course. It's not been developed, so you have to do it. So this is tricky, but it's so worthwhile. Now, I'm going to anticipate one question, which is, does it work, and is it serious, and how can you prove it works? And I'm just going to show you how I did that, because the first time I did this, I asked to my school leaders, what do you think about this? And they were a bit skeptical, but they did trust me. And they said, well, is there any way that you can validate this? So what I did was I put the kids into a Cambridge exam, an external Cambridge exam. And before we started the gamified course, I gave them the test. And predictably, the results followed a bell curve. And the bell curve looked like that. And this was fail. And this was pass. And then this was it's kind of a B. So this was fail, this is pass B, and this would be the top grade. And it was a good class. So I gave them that. And then what you would expect over the course of a semester in a traditional teaching is that you would move that bell curve to the right, so that the kids that had a fail would move to pass, and those ones would move to B, and those ones would move to A. That's what you would expect. And what I did after the gamified course, they took the exam externally, it had nothing to do with me. And what I saw was actually not even a bell curve anymore. What it was this is the level of A. What I saw, and this is the level of B. And what I saw was this. Everybody got the highest grade, except for a couple of kids. And then I showed that to the management. They said, okay, that's great, keep doing that. 2 kids from this class one got 99.8%, one got 99.2%. And the guys from the Cambridge Examining Centre called me and said, what is going on with that class? So, almost finished now. This is the last slide. Let me just present, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I will send you, okay, why do it well? We did this.
Excuse me?
Yes?
I just wanted to say that I agree with you that, you know, when you want to speak to the school about including games, certain games that could be beneficial for whatever subject that you teach, it's not going to be easy. But there's also, like, I'm taking it from another, out of experience, because I'm a huge video gamer. Right. There are certain, sorry, yeah.
Go on, yeah, that's great. Me too, fantastic.
There are games, like I've played tons of games, and they could be incorporated in a way where the students actually get what they need, and they're also having fun. And I'm talking about games like ones that are already on PS4 consoles or have PC versions, and they could actually be used. But my question is, I've started researching video game companies to see if they have any education versions of the games that they produce. And I haven't really been that lucky with many options, because the games that we are suggesting are really fun. But I would like to give my students that experience of living in the shoes of a character and anticipating what the story is going to be about. And it really helps with developing or understanding story elements and how to extract them and so on.
I completely agree with that. And, you know, I have worked as in the story part of games companies, and, you know, the stories in some games are amazing, and they have so much cultural, historical context that you can share with the kids. And as you say, not many of these games have, let's say, educational versions. And so, as I explained to you with Among Us, you have to find the lesson in the game. I also agree with you that it's not an easy conversation sometimes with school management. I've been teaching at home the last while, and, you know, my wife occasionally walks past me, and even though she knows that I am, you know, an expert on gamification, and I speak at conferences and I give webinars and I'm writing a book about gamification, even though she knows that, she said to me the other day, she's like, do you just play games with your kids all day? And she got quite annoyed, you know, because she's looking after my child and I'm sitting here playing games all day. So it is a difficult conversation. But if you look, the research on this is very clear. It's very, very clear. It's like playing games with your kids. If you walk into a classroom and say, let's play a game, then the reaction is going to be, oh yeah, great, let's play a game. So the research is clear, and the experience of teachers is clear, because we're humans, because we love games, because we play games, because they help us to deal with life and learn skills we need in life. And that's what education's about. So that's why it's my practice, and that's why I do it. I've been lucky in the support that I've had from the leadership of the school. It helps that I teach in private schools, because the kids go home and say to their parents what a brilliant class they had, and then the parents tell the schools what a great teacher John is, and then the school says, keep doing what you're doing. But but I've been lucky. I've definitely been lucky. So sometimes...
John, there's another question.
Okay, I've really only got a few more minutes, Malavan, because we've gone over by 15. So let's have the other question. Yes?
From Fiona Jones. How can gamification be used for adult learning?
For adult learning? That's a very good question. Now, I can give you one good example of gamification. Does everybody know Duolingo? Duolingo is the app where you learn a foreign language, and that is a purely gamified app aimed at adult education in languages. So adults like playing games also. You just have to take the material that you want them to learn about, and you have to try to find a way to give in the game context, the learners, the autonomy, the mastery, and the relatedness that they need in order to incentivize them to take the journey through the game, which is actually the course, which is actually the curriculum material of that course. We really ran out of time. I did want to show you this. So Kahoot is great. Kids really like it. Students really like it. I think it's sort of a trick on them that they're having a test on their mobiles, and that's why they get excited, which seems a bit strange to me. But if they like it, if it works, great, that's fine. I do use that. But I also, as I said earlier, I use a lot of quiz show formats. And a great one is Jeopardy here. So you have an easy question, or a medium question, and a hard question, and you have teams. And if you set up the rules in a way that, let's say you get a question, if you can't answer it, your teammates can help you. If they can't answer it, it goes over to the other team. So actually suddenly doing a formative assessment becomes a collaborative task. And everybody can find their own level. Okay, I'm not comfortable answering a difficult question, but in this environment, every kid or every student is thinking about every question because it might come to them next. If that student can't answer it, we're going to answer it. Or if we can't answer it, they can't answer it, we're going to answer it. So it's it's a very focused assessment, and it's less of a pressure on the students because they enjoy playing this game. Really, they really enjoy it. So again, Family Fortune or Family Feud, as it's called in the US, or Blockbusters, there's a lot. Look at some quiz show formats if you're really stuck for how to assess students. That's it. Thank you very much. I didn't even get time to talk about physical games. That's not really appropriate for the online classroom, but I use them a lot. Actually, I play a lot of theatre games, which is a great way to get them focused, concentration. This is very important. Great, stand up. You're all sitting down, stand up. Right, we're going to play a game of wink murder, where people kill each other by winking. And so you've got to play that in complete silence. You've got to be completely focused so you can spot the person doing the winking. Right, we did that for 3 minutes. Right, sit down. Now everyone's concentrated, everyone's quiet, and everyone's calm. Let's continue with the class. A lot of language games, an infinite number of language games, and also party games. Board games. I love board games so much. Actually, they're my favorite. I like video games, but board games, sitting down with people and playing a board game is one of the greatest joys in life for me because it's got everything. It's got the autonomy. It's got the mastery because there's that competition with your friends. But also, it's just about being with your friends and having fun. What I'd encourage you all to do is try it. Keep testing. Make it better. It doesn't matter whether it's a video game or an analog game. The students don't feel any difference. They like both. There's no need to be like, oh, okay, I don't understand video games. It doesn't matter. You can you can have 30 minutes of great fun with students if you have 3 dice. That's all you need. You can play about 10 games with those 3 dice, and those 30 minutes will go by in 3 minutes. Now, this was just a really fast journey through this. This is a lot of stuff that is uncovered. And I will be offering with Malavan, I'm going to be talking to Malavan after this, a more in-depth workshop and training. And it will be split into 2 parts. One which will be game-based learning, where we're talking about different games, different subjects, and how to design a game, and how to look, what resources to find and what games are good and how you can put this together. And that's what that will be about. And then there'll be one on gamification, which, as I hope you realize, and as the questioner mentioned, is a very, very big subject. So in this training, we'd be looking at how you would gamify aspects of what you teach or the whole thing, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been really, really enjoyable to talk about all this, and I really humbly hope that you found it enjoyable. Let me stop the share so I can see some people's faces. Really, really, really nice to talk to you all, and it would be great if I see some of you in January and we get to work together more. I didn't even mention Minecraft. Someone just popped it up there. Minecraft is again, it's a beautiful example of a game that was such a good game. Kids were so addicted to it, and it had so much educational potential that Microsoft bought it and turned it into an educational tool, and it's an excellent educational tool. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to put into this chat here that what you should look at, which is John Hunter TED talk. I encourage you all to watch that after this, because it's a wonderfully, it makes the hairs on your arms stand up. It's inspiring. It's like, wow, that's what teaching can be. So John Hunter TED talk, you'll see that. Thank you very much. Malavan, we shall speak in the next days. Definitely. I think, John, okay. you helped Microsoft make $2 more million, I think. Yeah, well, there you go. But it is very, very good. Thank you. That just helped Microsoft. Good to come up with an affiliate program. Right. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope this discussion was very helpful. We're going to be sharing the recording of this session, and there was a lot of information that was shared on the chat. We are going to share the chat file as well, and the presentation slides. And the course is just being developed. The course that John talked about is just being developed. So hopefully before probably by the middle of the month, middle of December, we should have the course plan ready, and we'll share that also with you around that time. Thank you very much. We'll be emailing you with a video link, and we'll be requesting for the name that has to appear on your certificate. Just reply that mail and mention the name that has to go on it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome, salam.